Welcome. My name's Emily Handler. I'm one of the nurses in the cardiac rehab program here at Mass General Hospital. Today we're here to talk about stress and the relaxation response. We've talked about risk factors, and you know now that stress is one of the risk factors for developing coronary artery disease. And we also know that our lives are stressful. There's a lot going on in the world right now, and we have a lot of control over how our bodies react to stress. So I'd like to share some information about stress with you today. By the end of the class, I hope that you can define stress, that you can identify what your warning symptoms are for stress when it's getting high for you, and also have some strategies in your bag of tricks to go to when you feel stressed and ways to lower the stress and modify your stress response. Okay, so let's begin. So stress is really anything that we perceive that's a threat to our physical or our emotional well-being. So you might imagine what's stressful for me might not be stressful for you. So what we perceive as stress is based on a lot of things, but one is our own life experiences, one is the role models in our lives, and anything that you perceive as a threat to your physical or emotional well-being. So that's different for everyone. What's interesting, though, is as soon as you perceive that stress as a threat to your physical being or emotional well-being, there's a biochemical response in the body. And you know what that is for you. But you're going to learn a little bit more about that today. So what happens when we feel stressed? We're wired to survive, remember. So even though it dates back to caveman days, it's a good example of how the stress response works. So imagine you're a caveman. You're returning to your cave after a day of hunting, and there's a bear in there. Well, you have a choice. You either run from the bear, okay? You can fight the bear, and also there's that fight, fright, or freeze. You might freeze, hoping the bear doesn't see you. So in order for the body to be prepared to protect you, there are many reactions that happen in the body. Catecholamines are secreted, raising blood pressure, raising heart rate, even increasing the irritability of the heart muscle, as we talked about arrhythmias in the past. It might create some spasming of the coronary arteries because those stress hormones are just surging around. And again, remember, this is a perception that you have. But you're in this situation, and your body is going to respond if you feel threatened. So clearly you can understand that high blood pressure, spasm of the coronary arteries, irregular heartbeats, high heart rate are not something that you're going to want to support your heart health. So we'd like you to understand the flip side of that survival response, and we're going to call that the thrive response. Our bodies are also wired to thrive, but they need a little coaching. It needs a little coaching, the body, to get into that thrive mode, because survival is hardwired in our system. So that's what we're going to talk a little bit more about today. We're going to talk about ways in which you can modify your response. So where does the response come from? It usually comes from a thought you're having. I see the bear. I think the bear is going to attack me, right? That's a thought. Whether that thought is real or not, you respond in your body. What's interesting, and it's very helpful if there's a fire alarm that goes off, you want to move really quickly and get out of the building. You don't want to have your creative juices saying, let's see, which way would be the most fun to get out of this building? No, you need to move quickly. So there's a reason that you have this survival response. It is a gut response, and there are situations in which you need to have that response. However, there are also situations that happen so many times in the day that aren't really life-threatening like that. So we want to help you modify the way that your body responds by checking in with the thought that comes behind that feeling of anxiety, maybe depression, maybe irritability, maybe shakiness, whatever it is. So let's start to think about what ways the body does respond to stress. Let's start with physical. Most of us can be in tune to our physical well-being. And we might notice at the end of the day, our shoulders kind of come up to here, and maybe they don't look this high, but we carry a lot of tension in the shoulders when we're feeling stressed. Some people might hold their tension in their heads and get headaches when they feel a lot of stress. Sometimes their belly, got to run to the bathroom perhaps. Sometimes people hold it in their low back and they get low back pain. Some people hold it in their heart, they get chest pain when they're feeling stressed. Stress can present in those ways into the body. So we want you to be thinking about what is your stress warning signal? Do you get headaches? Do you get muscle tension? Do you get a little dry mouth like I have right now? Do you feel lightheaded? Do you feel short of breath? Do you feel like your heart is pounding? Could be arrhythmia causing that. Do you feel excessively fatigued? That's another physical symptom of stress. And also, even being restless is a symptom of stress. So those are some things we want you to just be investigating about yourself in the days to come. Another way that stress can manifest itself is through our emotions, and I did mention some of those emotions already. Usually, most of us have sort of a go-to emotion. So we might be prone to depression or feeling a little down, or we might be prone to anxiety. Some of us might get a little angry when we're upset, and we might feel a little cynical, and we might act aggressively. Those are physical and emotional ways that we might respond to stress. So I'd like you to become in tuned a little bit more to your emotions over the course of the weeks that you're contributing to your health by coming to cardiac rehab, and be thinking about what happens when you have those feelings. You know, what do you feel in the body when your emotions are the way they are? And then also we want to recognize that, if you can believe it, stress also affects the way that we think. Now remember, when the fire alarm goes off, we are like right out of there. You know, we move really quickly if we feel threatened. That's great. We want to be focused on that one thing. Again, we don't want to be thinking about which exit am I going to go out, and start being creative with our brain. Our brain needs to be focused. So that is a good example of what happens when we're under the stress response. We lose our creativity. You know, we have a hard time remembering when we're feeling stressed. Somehow that joke just wasn't funny. We just can't even get ourselves to laugh at a joke. So these are some ways that our brain is telling us that we're under stress. So we want you to be in tune to those things as well. Sometimes our mind just goes blank. We can't think of anything. Or we become really cynical, and we think, nothing's ever good. And we get this sort of negative attitude about life. And that literally can be impacted by the biochemistry of the brain. So an awareness to that will help you intervene and modify that response, and maybe change the thought that makes you feel that way. And then lastly, as we know, stress can drive negative behaviors. So we know that when we're stressed, we feel it's hard to fit in exercise, isn't it? I mean, it is. It's just hard to do that. It's hard to sleep sometimes when we're feeling stressed. It's hard to stop smoking when you're feeling stressed. So it's important to know that some people, when they're stressed, they might go to the liquor cabinet and think, maybe a glass of wine will help me relax. Or sometimes there are some what we call comfort foods, right? So we go to the fridge and we think, I'll feel better after I eat something really yummy. We want you to start to become in tune to what is your go-to behavior when you're feeling stressed. Do you go to the fridge? Do you start being aggressive and blaming people for everything that's going on? Do you drink alcohol excessively? Do you become really bossy, criticizing others? Or do you withdraw like you might if you were feeling depressed? So these are areas that can be very helpful to help you understand yourself, so that you can use some strategies to reverse the stress response. First, by looking at the very beginning of that stress response. What was the trigger? So we can become aware of what in our daily hassles, what are the things that kind of flip you off, that just make you really upset or really sad. Become aware of those things so that you can change the way that you're thinking about them. Things like words that we say in our mind, like, oh, this always happens, or I should have done this. It's important to recognize that words like, sometimes this happens, or maybe I can get some exercise in today, might be more positive words that you could use in your mind that can help you change the way that your body and your mind and your physical feelings, emotions will respond. Remember that all of the actions that you take and the behaviors that you have are triggered by the thought process. So it's important if we can recognize what's behind your behavior, what's underneath all that. Then you begin to explore a little bit about what would be more comforting for you. And so we'll bring you now to recognizing the relaxation response. You're going to be learning about belly breathing in the program. So learning just how can you get your blood pressure to come down? How can you calm yourself right in the moment when you're feeling that stress? The mantra is take a deep breath. Deep breath. You can get through this. Positive self-talk. You can do this. Other ways that you can support yourself are by eating healthfully. It's very important. All those fruits and vegetables are good for your brain too. They're good for your stress. So all of those little micronutrients that you have when you have a variety in your diet is very helpful to your stress level. Make sure that you exercise. Exercise is a great way to burn off those stress hormones. You can process what's bothering you and just leave it behind. Another way that you can recover from the stress response is actually to get a good night's sleep. Really important. We want you to get at least 7 hours of sleep in the night, not more than 9, but 7 to 9 hours is acceptable and healthy for you. That is the time when the body heals. That is the time when you actually get to recover from all that you're going through and also dissipate any of the stress hormones that have come on through the course of the day. And the other thing that you can do to help your stress management is to really engage in your mind, with your mind and your body in a relaxation technique. Just practicing, it takes practice. That's why they call it a practice. Meditation is called practice. And just setting aside 3 to 5 minutes a day just to focus on your stress management could be really, really impactful on your recovery. So start now. Take a nice deep breath. Smile to yourself. Know that you can get through this. A confident and upbeat attitude, and even smiling when you really don't feel like smiling, can really change your mood. Give it a try. Thanks for joining me today.